Hi, welcome to MamaFuel. My name is Anne Ferguson. I am your host, and I'm thrilled to bring you this podcast that was created to fuel every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully spark a dream or two along the way. My mission is to change the way that we mamas treat ourselves and each other so that we feel better, live happier lives, and change the world one happier family at a time. In the MamaFuel podcast, I'm sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with amazing mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of being a gorgeous woman shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. You are amazing, and I cannot wait to share this conversation with you. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. My name is Anne Ferguson. I am your host, and unusually, today I am going to be recording a solo show for you. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you of how incredibly powerful it is to live and exist supported by other incredible people in your community, be they men, women, children, parents, cousins, nephews, nieces, neighbors, whoever it is. I hope that you are able, wherever you are, to surround yourself by like-minded, open-hearted, non-judgmental, unconditional love and friendship. And if you don't feel that, then I hope that you will take from some of the things that I talk about today and some of the previous conversations that I have had some inspiration for creating your own beautiful community. If you are in Switzerland in the month of November and you would like to join me this upcoming weekend on the 9th and 10th of November, I will be in the Zurich area doing 2 urban retreats for mamas. I will also do one on the 23rd of November in Geneva, and all you need to do to get all the information is go to mamafuel.me/urban retreats, and you can choose the dates that work for you. There's also a date in December, and I will look forward to seeing you there. There's a lovely group gathering in each of those locations, and I would love a chance to give you a huge hug and get to know you. Right, let's get on with today's episode. A special episode because this is the 60th episode of MamaFuel, the podcast, an idea that had been brewing for quite a long time before I finally worked up the courage to hit record and create this space online to share conversations with all of you about being a mama and what our journeys can look like. So often there is comparison in the world of mothering. There is judgment in the world of mothering almost from conception. Nobody's going to judge you on how you conceive your child. In fact, I say that. I'm not even sure that that's true because there are lots of ways to conceive a child and lots of different ways. In fact, the conversation that I had with Em Stroud, she was telling us about building her beautiful family with her dear friend and business partner, and they had their son. There are lots of ways to have a little one, and almost from that point, there seems to be this pall of judgment, comparison, and inclusion-exclusion that starts to happen around us as mothers and around the choices that we make. That continued, certainly for me, through pregnancy, and I feel has waned a little bit now as my kids are older. They're 10 and 12, but we still make choices that are different from other people's, and other people obviously will make choices differently from ours, and in some cases it can be quite painful to see the distance that occurs between us and other people who have different ideas and different perspectives and different priorities and values. Sometimes it can be quite isolating. Something else that can be quite isolating, which is really alive for me right now, in that people have been asking me a lot recently in entrepreneurial circles, what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart about the area that you work in? And what keeps coming up for me is this. It breaks my heart to see incredibly passionate, talented, intelligent, beautiful women slowly, little by little, disappearing themselves into the act of mothering. Disappearing themselves because they want, I say they, I was exactly this way when my girls were small. the intention of being the best mom I possibly could be, the intention of being different from my parents relative to the ways that I wish that they had been a little bit different. So I had fantastic parents, still have a very loving mom. And there are ways that I wish that she had been present as a child and that I wanted to make sure I created those experiences for my girls. And so often what I see with the mamas that I work with in the MamaFuel world is this deep, burning desire to be the best mama they know how to be somehow superhuman. And what often happens is that the human behind the super starts to disappear. And today I want to talk about 3 ways that you can start to shift things a little bit so that you take up some space and you have some room to express yourself, to express your needs, and to have different kinds of connections and relationships within your family and beyond that will be much more nurturing for you and leave you feeling way more satisfied, and will also cut down on some resentment and guilt. So let's get started. First, I want to remind you of a story. If you haven't listened to this episode, there was an episode earlier on the podcast that I will link to with Glenys Trender, who is a mom of 3 and has a differently wired son and 2 daughters. And she did that thing of giving everything to her family, giving time, making sure the meals were on the table, everyone had everything they needed, all the social organizing, all of the things, right? And she was also an artist, and she disappeared. So much of herself disappeared. And it got to the stage where it was such a critical situation for her that her marriage broke down and that she took 4 weeks in a caravan and left her home and drove to France in the caravan and lived in it for 4 weeks because she needed to get away and remember who she was. It was successful, and she and her husband have found a way to come together with a new framework and a new relationship, and they're very happy. But it doesn't have to go it doesn't have to go on so long. It doesn't have to get to such an extreme situation where we just run screaming. I remember in one of my first jobs having a conversation with someone, a dear colleague, and she was explaining to me that when she was little, there were 4 of them, I think, in the family, and that when she was little, her mom left. It was too much. She left, and they didn't have much of a relationship with her. I have no idea what the situation was. I don't know what the support was. I don't know anything about the relationships, but I remember at the time feeling confused and not really understanding how that could happen. And in my early 20s, feeling judgmental as well. How could a mom leave her children? Now that I'm in my mid-40s and I have kids who are 10 and 12, I understand that it is possible to lose yourself so completely in the act of mothering, to want so much to be available for the little humans we have created, to want so very much for them to have amazing lives, to be provided for in the ways that we perhaps weren't, to have every opportunity, that it becomes, we set ourselves a Herculean task and we don't have, we're human. We aren't Herculean. And we push so hard to put the super into SuperMama that we disappear. So there are ways that we can start to connect differently to the people around ourselves, and most of all to connect with ourselves, to remember, because when I have conversations with mamas, when I bring mamas together in workshops and I say to them, what do you like to do for fun? And I just see dead eyes. They just have these dead eyes because they don't remember what they do for fun. And not every mama is in this situation. Some mamas have managed from the outset to be very clear and strong in their commitment to themselves first, before their children. I have friends who had day nannies and night nannies. I had friends who have had night nurses to help with the overnight feedings. People obviously need resources in order to make that happen, right? It's not something that's available to everybody, nor is it what everybody would choose. But there are examples all around me of mamas who have chosen to not subsume themselves and submit their time and submit their dreams, subject their dreams, rather, is what I was looking for, subject their dreams to a shrinking because they've become mamas. And for a long time, I didn't understand that. But the more I started looking into this idea of creating a space for us to have conversations, the more I started realizing that we strip ourselves of so much of what is inherently us in this act of really, from a heartfelt place, wanting to be the best mamas. And it's damaging to us. And the results can be quite extreme. The results can be mamas leaving, marriages breaking down, relationships crumbling between mamas and children, job losses, illness, all sorts of things. So how can we find ways to start to create space, to take up space, to physically occupy space, to emotionally occupy space, and to step into what it is that we need and desire beyond our role of being an incredibly loving, dedicated, passionate mama? The first thing that I want to talk about is connecting. And it sounds really simple, right? But when is the last time that you actually took some time to sit down, put your hand on your heart, one hand on heart, one hand on belly, and do some soft belly breathing? So let your spine be strong and let your belly get soft and inflate and then collapse back down, and inflate and then collapse back down as you breathe. When is the last time you did that? When is the last time perhaps you repeated a mantra? Maybe you can say to yourself, I am as you inhale, and here as you exhale. I am as you inhale, here as you exhale. It is so simple. But remembering when you're in the midst of running around and driving the kids hither and yon to soccer practice and gymnastics and singing and woodworking and boxing and any of the things, school, just taking them to school, particularly for those of us who are international or who are living anywhere away from the people and places that we come from, the busyness of doing all the things that we somehow place a value on so that our children be satisfied, so that our children be living rich lives, so that our children have all the extracurriculars, so that our children have and live and experience, doesn't leave a whole heck of a lot of space for you to have and live and experience. So how can you connect in with yourself on a really simple level, taking some deep breaths every day and finding a way for you to include yourself? And this brings me to point number 2. So point number 1 is to connect with yourself and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Literally ask yourself inside of you, what do I need right now? You can speak to yourself in the second person. What do you need right now? What do you need right now? And you might not get an answer on the first day or the first sit or the first 5 days or whatever it is. Give yourself time, because if you have repressed your inner voice, if you have repressed your needs, if you have repressed connection and just bulldozed over it because you're so busy getting to all the things, being so efficient and contributing so much to everyone in the family, be patient. Give that little inner voice time to start to trust that you're really going to listen. And then when she speaks, see what comes up and honor that. As you start to connect more and more, and again, it doesn't have to be long. Maybe it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Maybe you meditate. Maybe you don't. Maybe you go for a walk instead. Whatever it is that works for you. Step number 2 is to give yourself some quick wins. So step 1 is connect. Step 2 is to give yourself quick wins. Here's what I mean by that. When you are able to try something new and right away get a taste of what it might be like if you were successful in doing this every day, you're wired to want to keep doing more of it. So if you can find ways in the richness of your life at this moment, in the midst of the frenzy of the running around and all of the things that need to happen, the less support you have around you, the more things will be on your plate you may have taken on. How can you give yourself opportunities to include yourself in things? So I'll give you an example. I used to take my daughter to a dance class. The little one was at nursery and the big one was at school. And on Wednesdays, they don't have school until the age of 7, and then only in the morning. So my kids still don't have school in the afternoon on Wednesdays. That's just how it is in Switzerland. And I used to go to that dance class and sit outside with the other parents who were sitting there on their phones. And then I decided that it was an hour that I was, instead of sitting there like a chauffeur sitting in the car waiting for the ride to, the person to come out of the restaurant or whatever, I could take that time for myself. And so I started stretching. I would walk up this staircase. It was in a primary school, and I would walk up 2 or 3 floors of a staircase and do some stretching. I even brought my yoga mat and did a few yoga practices while I was waiting for my daughter to finish her dance class. It was a really quick win, and it was really easy because it was yes, and what about me? Yes, and where's my quick win? Yes, and how can I include myself? My other daughter goes to riding lessons once a week, and it's a 2-hour stint at the barn. And I could drive there and drive home and drive out and drive back, but that would be an hour in the car in total, and I'm not interested in that. I am, however, interested in a quick win and interested in including myself. So I take my daughter to the barn with the dog. I'm also including the dog. I take my daughter to the barn with the dog, and I get a 2-hour, really brisk, really active walk in. Do I always feel like walking the dog? No, I do not. Do I always want to be outside when my daughter is at the barn? No, I do not. Do I do it anyway? Yes. Why? Because it is my commitment to myself and a quick win that I also get some time. Because if I don't, here's what happens. When I'm driving my kids around to football and singing and theater and all the things, I start to feel really resentful because my inner voice, my inner beast starts to tell me things like, you're only driving people around and they don't even appreciate it and they don't care and nobody's grateful and that kind of thing. And it's really harmful and damaging in addition to being untrue. My kids are super grateful. They do appreciate it. They don't always express it, to be fair, but they are appreciative. And also, hang on, I have taught them to depend on me. I have taught them to rely on what it is that I am doing. I have taught them to expect that I'm just going to be available to drive them around all the time, that I'm just going to be available to help them with their homework every day, that I'm just going to be available to make the dinner happen every night. That's what I've taught them. So if I were to decide, you know what, I'm not doing dinner anymore, you're 10 and 12, you can have a sandwich, sort it out. From one day to the next, that would be really violent for them and for me. I would struggle going from full meal on the table every night to sort yourselves out, I'm out. But that can be what happens. So find ways that you have little quick wins so that you can start to turn the dial down on any resentment you might be feeling. And also, heads up, turn the dial down, keep it low on guilt, because that may come up. For sure it'll come up when you start also saying, hey, and me. What about me? I also get some time here. Where can I give myself a quick win? If I'm taking my child to an event, an activity, and it's dark and I can't go inside when the activity is happening and I'm just going to sit in the car and it's dark. Well, you're probably not going to practice yoga in the parking lot. Okay, maybe you go and find a cafe to sit in and you book a Skype date with a good friend. Maybe there's another mom there and you strike up a friendship and you start to spend a bit of time with that person. Find little tiny quick wins that don't require you to carve out extra time on top of all the SuperMama stuff that you're doing. And that way you will be able to start to feel how amazing it is to include yourself. So that's step 2. Step 1 is to connect with yourself and listen and ask, what do you need right now? And then honor those things. 2, quick wins. Find ways that you are able to actually give yourself something when you're giving to others. I'm not saying stop all the things, stop being SuperMama, and focus solely on you as though you had no responsibilities. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that if you do not attend to your needs, if you do not attend to what it is that your little voice is asking for, be it more sleep, be it time outside, being play, be it laughter, be it dancing, be it a hug, whatever it is, if you do not attend to that, eventually your heart, body, mind, and soul will bring you to a screeching halt in ways that you will not enjoy, your family will not enjoy, and it's not going to be very good for you, either on a health level, mentally, or physically. So it's really worth taking the time to connect and to give yourself some quick wins. The third thing that needs to happen for you to start taking up more space and be less disappearing self, but amazing SuperMama, is to speak your needs. That might sound really simple, right? 3 words: speak your needs, as if it was easy to do. Here's the thing. If, as I said before, you have taught your family to expect your 200% availability, as I did with my family from day dot, then that is simply what they're going to expect, you to be available. And why wouldn't they? Because that is how you have set up the relationship, particularly with your kids. So speaking your needs becomes something that, again, you start doing in small increments. And the reason you need to speak your needs, one is for yourself to honor those needs and to start to create space for them in your family. But 2, because as amazing as your partner may be, if you have one, as incredible as I'm sure your amazing children are, the reality is they're not mind readers. You have developed, likely, a 6th sense that will allow you to see, feel, and hear what your family needs almost before they even know it. But it doesn't work in the other direction. We think it should, and on some level, we seem to think that our families should understand what our needs are without us having to say it. Isn't it obvious that I need more sleep? Isn't it obvious that I need more time? Isn't it obvious that I could use a break? And the answer is, children are focused on themselves, which is totally normal. And if you have a partner, and if that person has been accustomed to your availability, it is challenging to suddenly start to remember to make different kinds of time and space. Shifting the dynamic in any relationship is a challenge. And I'm particularly speaking, and this will be the case for everybody, right? I have a dear friend with a very, very high-profile career, very well-to-do, who still, in addition to her husband, who also has a very, very high-profile career, she still shoulders the bulk of the mental load and the bulk of the organizing for the house and for, support that they have at home around their kids and around their home. And, at that level, the discussions are different, the conversations are different, the space that you take up is different because there is a high-profile career involved. And for some of us who maybe have chosen to stay home or who through expat postings end up at home wondering, what the heck happened? How did I find myself here in this 1950s bubble, which is very much the case for many expat couples. You kind of, if you've set up the relationship so that people expect you to be available, it is really tricky to shift things. So you can do things like start small and say things like, this is what I'm available for and this is what I'm not available for, but then mean it and do it. So for instance, I'm not available to talk to you or tell you where to find things when I'm in the toilet. Simple. Not easy to get everybody on board in our house when the kids were smaller. Now we're good, but it took some years. I would love when we get home to make you a snack. Would you like me to make you a snack? Yes, Mommy. Great. So that I can make you a snack, what I need is for you to hang up your coat and put your boots away, because they don't have a lobotomy when they walk in the front door. They still know how to do those things that they do at nursery. Do you still want me to make you a snack? Yes, Mommy. Great. So what are you going to do when you get in the house? Put our coats away and our shoes away. Great. And they will need reminding and they will need love. But the The goodies for you is that you have been able to ask for what you need, and you've been able to give the kids some agency and choice. This is what I need in order to do these things, to drive you around to all the places, to organize all the things, to create all of the beautiful meals, whatever it is. This is what I need. Are you interested in this exchange? And the kids can say yes or no. And when you have been wearing the SuperMama cape that has also as a double feature the function of suffocating you and making you disappear slightly, it can be really hard to take that off. Hear me. Take it off. You don't want to end up in a situation where things feel so dramatic that your relationship collapses or that you have unnecessary tension in your home and that you lose yourself. That can have really serious mental health, physical health, and relationship consequences. And that is not what I want for you. That's why MamaFuel exists, so that you can have some other opportunities, some other ways of thinking and feeling and perceiving yourself and thinking about what your options are. So the 3 ways to start taking up space that we talked about today. 1 is to connect deeply with yourself with some deep breaths and asking, what do I need? The 2nd is the quick wins. Find the ways that you can include yourself in whatever else it is that's going on. Don't start hacking away at all of the things that you've got set up. Just make space for you within your current organization. And then at a later date, you can start decluttering. You can start culling the things that aren't really serving you, the rides that you're no longer willing to give, and the sign up for things that you don't want to take your kids to that stuff anymore. And that's okay. You're allowed. But going from a place of being completely selfless SuperMama, because on some level we've accepted the programming that is something to aspire to, I don't agree. Having suffered some of what can happen if you give selflessly for a really long amount of time and don't get a whole lot back. So the first was to take up space by connecting with yourself. The second one was to find some quick wins. And the third is to speak up and lovingly be firm and ask for what you need. So if you start by asking for people to pick up their coats and shoes when they come in the door, eventually, months or years down the road, you're going to start taking the time every day to go to the gym, or you're going to start taking the time every week to go to that class. You will find other ways to take up space within the family organism beyond your function as the person who takes care of everyone else, because it's not really that fulfilling after a while. My invitation to you is this. For the next 2 weeks, try one of those 3 things. Try it. When you have, I would love for you to come into our virtual village, which is our free community on Facebook. I will link to that in the show notes. But if you go to mamafuel.me/Facebook, you can find it there. Come into the virtual village in a couple weeks and tell me how it's gone. Tell me, even come in today when you're listening, tell me how you take up space. Tell me how you make space for yourself. Because right now, honestly, anytime someone says, what's breaking your heart about the work that you do, that's what comes up. Mamas who just disappear themselves in service and deep love to their families. It breaks my heart. And you know what else? I don't want my girls disappearing themselves ever. Not now when they're 10 and 12 and their needs are huge and they are not shy about speaking them. Not when they're 25, not when they're 45, or anywhere in between or beyond. I do not want my kids disappearing themselves. And that requires of me to take up space, to speak my needs without getting to the point where I'm being strident about it and without getting to the point where it breaks something within our family structure. Feels good to have shared all of that with you today on this 60th episode of MamaFuel the podcast. I'm so thrilled and honored to be in your earbuds. I am so excited to share these conversations across the world, and I would love to celebrate this 60th by getting some more ratings and reviews. The Apple podcast algorithm, which many of you listen on, is a fiddly little thing, and it requires lots and lots and lots of 5-star and positive reviews to share this podcast more broadly within the parenting and mothering community. So if you have 2 seconds, which really honestly I swear is all it takes, to go to Apple Podcasts and rate and leave a review for this podcast, I would be over the moon, because when you record a podcast, you do it in the isolation of your little podcast studio, which is also my office. And I just love, love, love any time that I hear from any of you about what this podcast means to you. And if you have any suggestions, you can always write to me at anne@mamafuel.me with any ideas or suggestions or requests of people you'd like me to talk to or subjects that you'd like me to talk about. I would love to hear from you. I'm looking forward to getting a review or to hearing from you, getting an email, and I would love to connect with you soon. If you are in Switzerland in the month of November and December, remember the MamaFuel Urban Retreats are happening. They will be happening in Egg near Zurich and in Zurich itself on the 9th and 10th of November and the 23rd of November right here in Geneva. We even have a December date on the 15th of December here in Geneva. I would love for you to come and join us for 4 hours of nurturing, delicious meditation, really gentle yoga, hugs, laughter, community, a circle of mamas who are taking time to put themselves first. It is the happiest making thing for me, and I love it, and I hope to see you there. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. That's it for this episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation, sharing, and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. To join the virtual village, go to www.mamafuel.me/Facebook. That's MAMAFUEL.me/Facebook. And be sure to say hi when you get there. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little mama fuel, and let's face it, we all have times when we're running on fumes, I'd love you to share this episode and to rate it and leave a review. The algorithms work that way. The more reviews there are and the more sharing there is, the more mamas will be able to feel encouraged and supported with the conversations that you just listened to in MamaFuel. Every comment helps, and it's always a super delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.